last year I did a new band called Lean Logic, and that captured the attention, as it happens, of the programmer at the Queen's Film Theatre in Belfast, Michael Staley, he's called, and he really liked the album and also liked some of the videos that we'd made, and so he he put, because it was during lockdown, he put our videos on the QFT, Queen's Film Theatre Belfast player, which was kind of part of the, I think they, joined forces, or rather the BFI allowed them to use their player or something. So anyway, and then actually Michael then got in touch with an AI artist in Northern Ireland called Gary Marshall, I think. And so he basically commissioned Marshall to do a video for Lean Logic. So anyway, so we sort of already worked with each other, myself and this guy Michael Staley. Anyway, so then Michael had it in his head that he would commission me to do something else in the future at some point. And then this, again, BFI, British Film Institute, season of horror films that they called In Dreams or Monsters, which is still, I think, still going at this moment. It was just the last few months of this year. So he had booked the film Hääxan to be shown at the Queen's Film Theatre in Belfast. And I guess it just occurred to him, well, how about doing a live score? And yeah, I think it's one of the ones to get someone to do a new soundtrack for, because it's a silent film, I guess, and it's also a really interesting film. But anyway, so Michael commissioned me to do that. He got in touch probably in July or something like that, and booked me to compose a new score for the film, and then perform it in Belfast on the 24th of November. So the film is 1 hour 45 minutes, and it's a silent film, so obviously I'm filling up all the space. But I also decided, well, I'll make an album out of it as well, which will kind of be my first solo album in a way. So I also had this sort of concurrent project to condense everything, the highlights, into a 45-minute album, I guess. So yeah, that's how it got going. Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I was never into sort of witchcraft or, I mean, for want of a better all-consuming phrase, the supernatural, other than just having an interest in reading, fantasy books or Edgar Allan Poe or M.R. James and so on. But I mean, I do think that there is something perhaps in the blood, as it were, growing up in the countryside, under dark trees, with the fire lit. I do remember there being blackouts in the 70s as I was a kid, and you know, I remember the candlelit nights and so on. But yeah, I think there's something maybe more subtle that chimes with me, and you know, and made the music more. I mean, the music that I would make anyway kind of fits the film and fits the whole themes, and so I think probably there is some sort of subtle DNA there, but I you know, I don't know, I wouldn't say that you know, I certainly am not, I mean I'm an agnostic. I don't have any sort of firm spiritual beliefs other than I don't really know what's going on. I can tell you that it thankfully went down really well. People were, yeah, they were, you know, really happy with it, and there was, you know, there were surveys at the end and so on, and so people were like writing what they thought of it and so on, and I mean, I think, yeah, I think people were entertained. Let's put it that way. Michael, you know, very kindly introduced me. But yeah, no, I didn't say anything. I was, I mean, I was nervous about being nervous, if that makes sense. Well, I kept them very broad, so and loose, but I looked at the sort of the Northern European kind of Sami drum, shamanic drum, and which I mean, I don't have a Sami drum, but I do have this little drum which I used in the soundtrack, and you know, people would bang those drums until they sort of went into a trance-like state, and so yeah, you know, there's a sequence in the film where all the witches, so they all fly to the Brocken Hill. It's Brocken, right? For Walpurgisnacht, the sort of witch Sabbath.
Yeah.
And there's a piece on my album, the soundtrack, called Witch Sabbath, which is sort of more of a theme. But then there's another portion called which I've called Diablerie. But on the film version, the score version, that happens again, and it's much longer, and it really does go for it, sort of thing. And it's when all these, you know, there's just all this bacchanalian sort of partying, basic witches and the sort of devils and things. The synths are just making an absolute blitzkrieg of noise, which, I mean, to be honest, that was so exhilarating to play live. Yeah. So that's the Sami drum anyway. I also used sort of a little, you know, crappy little wooden flute that I have, and sort of overdubbed that. Like I say, keeping things very loose. I just, you know, I used looped samples and things, and there's a lot of 3/4 time. You know, this not your sort of 19th century waltzes, but sort of before then, and harpsichord and so on. There are the inquisitors, the sort of Catholic inquisitors in their court, and so I used my imagination really, but also did a little bit of reference and did sort of grand pieces for the court section and so on. This little bit, in the court of the Inquisitor, it's called on the album. So yeah, but I mean, I have to say I did keep things loose. The main instrument that I used was a little digital mellotron. Well, it's very cute now, but it's sort of parents and grandparents were not cute at all. They were big mechanical keyboard instruments that looked like sideboards, and each note triggers a spool of tape. So there's a recording of each note of like a guy playing a cello in 1964, or three women playing violins and choirs and so on, and they're all real recordings of people. And because it's this was the mellotron came out sort of in the late 60s, and went throughout the 70s, all those sort of prog rock bands and so on used them. But the thing that's really interesting about them is that the mechanics of it sound so antiquated to us now, and this is like pre-digital and pre-perfection sort of thing. And so, whereas these days character, perhaps you could argue, has been completely obliterated by perfection, it completely exists in the mellotrons, the mechanical ones. And actually, to be honest, my little digital one is maybe a little too clean. The guy that sort of sourced all of the original master tapes and so on, I can clean them up a little bit and sort of, corrected some of the wobbles and so on. It's still a great instrument, but yeah, the original mellotrons were very wonky and weird, and quite suitable for this sort of thing. And so I mainly used these sort of really scrapey cello sounds on the soundtrack. So I kind of knew going in that I'd do that, and that kind of came from the band that I did with Katie and Nick. That was sort of like a nice carryover to this project that was already there. So there was a little bit of research and a little bit of trying to do things, correctly for the timeline, but it was very loose, and I just really used my imagination, to be honest. Well, I think if you'd asked me that 10 years or 20 years ago, I would have probably, rightly or wrongly, been in this mode where I think, well, it's the present now and all the lights are on and we're just completely enlightened and everything is, of course they were all so stupid back then, believing all this rubbish. But in the last 10 years, there's just so much conspiracy, and there's been a reaction against experts. Yeah. Again, in some cases rightly, but probably, in my opinion, mostly wrongly. And so I think, weirdly, we're living in times that resemble medieval times, sort of pre-Enlightenment times. Yeah. And it's almost like people want it. They are looking for meaning, which is a great thing to do, and it's what the human race has always done. But I think it's sort of a cliche, but in a sort of post-90s, very fast digital world, we just want the easiest, quickest answers, and normally they're totally wrong because they completely shirk any complexity. So yeah, and of course there's the whole thing that everyone recognizes now about the funnel that you look down in your social media, which is just you're just mates with all the people with the same opinions. So yeah, it's been said so many times before, but yeah, I do think these are very, very weird times, and it's quite depressing, and of course all the while looming over us is environmental catastrophe, and yet many people unfortunately have been swayed by cynical, people who don't believe in climate change. Experts have been brought down several pegs. So have facts. Facts are kind of on a par with belief now. Well, for the Hääxan film, I actually didn't watch the film straight through until I'd already spent probably, at least 3 weeks working on it. So I guess maybe that answers the question. What I was looking for was a certain feeling and a certain look or, atmosphere, and that would trigger any, music. And also I did have a few pieces that I thought would probably fit, so I suppose more prosaically I was just looking through the film to see where I could stick. But yeah, I mean, I think it is more the atmosphere of things. I'm not a very narrative sort of following person in a way, although I will do it, and I recognise the interest in it. But yeah, I mean, I suppose thinking back as a fan of music, I never really was one of those people that followed the lyrics, whereas of course there's a whole camp of people that were, particularly in my generation, they were all like following the Smiths. I don't know, I didn't really listen out for the lyrics, but I mean I do read and stuff, so yeah, I mean I don't just sit in my room making instrumental electronic music, but yeah, I think maybe the atmosphere comes first for me. Barry Lyndon is good. It's from 1976, I think, and yeah, it's a great film. But yeah, it uses pre-composed pieces of music that are from the time in which it's set, but very, very well. But yeah, there's that one, and then was really, really impressed by Under the Skin, Mika Levy. That was just amazing. On a completely sort of other end of the scale, I really like Passion, which Peter Gabriel did the music for. It was like the Passion of Christ sort of thing. That was great. When it came out, and bought the soundtrack album of that actually, and so it was like one of those rare soundtrack albums where you listen to it, just completely separate from the film. It just had it was its own album sort of thing. God. Well, going back to the first question, I didn't watch any other versions of Hääxan until I was like quite a way through the project, so it definitely didn't influence me at all. And also, whilst I really like the soundtrack for the 1968 one, so if anyone hasn't seen it, it's sort of like a jazz kind of avant-garde. It's Jean-Luc Ponty actually, and people, and it's really good. It's really good music. But I mean, I think I came from it from a very different perspective. I think, and I think you could definitely make a case for either, approach. But my approach was to sort of compose for the film as if I'd been commissioned by Benjamin Christensen, the director, and even though, I mean, this is going to sound a bit like waffle in a way, because obviously I'm using synthesizers, and the film was made in 1922. But despite the fact that I was using synths, I kind of composed in a way in which I sort of felt, I would have done at the time, and I just tried to make the music really, really fit each scene and the mood of the film, and as I say, very loosely though, albeit, but sort of in terms of the timeline and so on, the time period, Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like the original Häxan film as well from the 1920s. I mean, they had soundtracks. It's basically this jolly sort of string section, just sort of prancing along. And to me, it doesn't fit the moods at all. It doesn't enhance the film in any way. In fact, it really detracts. But the '68 version, I couldn't say it detracted from the film because I just think the music's so great. Where there was just sort of quite minimal percussion and stuff. But I don't know. It's a different approach. But I think probably in 1968 I would have loved it. I think it was a bit of an underground film for all the kind of dudes of the day, you know, like Bowie liked it, and like Peter Hamill, I'm guessing did, because he wrote a song called White Hammer that year. He'd just come out of the cinema and gone back to his bed sit and then wrote that. But and the second film, the second question rather, oh god, if I could speak to William Burroughs. God, speaking to William Burroughs, it's just like, God, what would you say to someone that, you know, after reading his books? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think, knowing William Burroughs, he'd educate me and tell me a hell of a lot of stuff that probably Benjamin Christensen didn't know either, you know, in his quite, you know, good research of the time. And, William Burroughs is like the kind of person that, you know, we talk about these sort of crappy conspiracies now that just are sort of like, you know, McDonald's conspiracy equivalent, but Burroughs knew the secret stuff that was really happening, you know. He was proper interesting conspiracy guy. But yeah, I don't know. I couldn't. I don't know. I think I'd just be too nervous to ask him anything, to be honest, because he's William Burroughs, isn't he? Well, if it was the 1920s, I would have chosen the theremin, I guess. I mean, I guess you can trace synthesizers back, you know, to surprisingly far back, you know. But at the same time, though, you know, if I was in the 1600s, I'd be very, very happy with a harpsichord. And I'm not really, actually, to be honest, although I may give the impression, sitting as I am, surrounded by synthesizers. I'm not really one of those guys that was like, for example, I mean, I'm old enough to have lived through, you know, the whole dance music scene in the sort of late 80s and 90s, and I mean, I like bits of it. I used to love the Aphex Twin and you know, stuff like that. But I'm not really the kind of guy that I just sort of set up a drum pattern and just make just electronic noise over the top. I kind of like to hear something else going on as well. So yeah, there's quite a lot of harpsichord, although it's not real, it's software harpsichord still, but there's quite a lot of harpsichord on the soundtrack, and very, very comfortable with that, you know, piano as well. So yeah, I mean, piano, you know, I'd be very happy with a piano. Yeah, that was good. I mean, so the Rosa Luxemburg documentary, I think, is probably about 20 minutes long. I can't remember, but I think it is. And I really just wrote kind of about 3 or 4 themes and I just handed that over, and then they being Novara Media, which is like a left-wing kind of group here in England, just put my themes where they wanted, sort of in the film, like, and it worked really well. Actually, I thought that it was quite rousing. Sort of, yes, I was happy as a sort of left-leaning person to do some work for Novara Media, but I don't know enough really to properly to properly answer. Well, I did a little bit of. Obviously I watched the documentary, so I saw that side of it, and I made the music for the documentary. So there was a little bit of, you know, surface and slightly below surface research for that. But yeah, I'm not an expert. So
Yeah.
I knew some of them that work there. By the way, just to answer your question about how it came about. So. I kind of know some of them are my friends, and so I was very happy to do it. Oh my god, It Bites. If anyone remembers It Bites. Well, I'd love that to happen. But I don't know. I mean, we're not really doing Katie and Nick at the moment. Although strangely enough, Katie was. I mean, we're still obviously we didn't sort of stop making music because we broke up the band or fell out or something like that. We're best pals. But she was messaging me a few days ago about a new band that we may do. So I don't know, but. Yeah, I'm sure we'll definitely work together again, and yeah, I guess we are beginning to talk about that, so possibly. Well, definitely not a monster. That's just too undignified. Possibly a witch, but maybe. Well, yeah, I think I'll have to go with witch because I'm afraid I don't really believe in life after death. So, yeah, I don't think I'd like being a ghost very much.